Welcome to Huddle Up with Matias Bueno. Today's guest is Senior Highlight Manager at TSN, Scott Hart. Scott, I'm so glad that you're able to join me on today's episode. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matias. I'm really looking forward to it and happy to be on with you.
Scott, just as we were talking before, you were mentioning that things have gotten even busier and things are getting ramped up on your end in terms of the world of sport, despite the fact that we've been living during COVID-19 for almost about a year now. How have you been able to handle such a crazy schedule, considering the fact that there may be less help than there was before with how things have been separated and you've had to do a lot of virtual stuff?
Yeah, no question. I've told people this, many people this, but it's certainly been the most challenging time of my career. No question about it, Matias. It's been a lot of, as I always say, it's almost one big gigantic jigsaw puzzle every day. So, we've had to, as you mentioned, we've had to deal with obviously people working here in the studio at TSN, but we're obviously with our health and safety protocols capped out on how many people we can have in the building. And then obviously we've had a lot of people working remotely. And that's one thing over the last almost year now, we've been into this pandemic that, we've had to get used to. So there's been a lot of heavy lifting with getting employees, set up at home, making sure that their system is running well and they can get used to the software. And obviously now things take a little bit longer when you're working remotely, but one of the things that I will say is I feel like now that we're almost a year into it, everybody has really bought in. They've done a fantastic job. We still get our shows to air every day. We do 3 sports centers a day and they've looked great and really crisp. And I would just say that, listen, yes, it's been a massive challenge, but we're pretty used to this now. There's a lot of things we had to do to get ready for this. Not only the health and safety protocols and making sure the newsroom was as safe as can be. And that's no question been sort of at the top of our priority list is everybody's comfort and health and safety. But you look at everything else when I talked about everyone's computer and their system and making sure that they have proper access to everything that they need to make SportsCenter the top-notch show that it is. So everyone's really gotten used to it. And like you'd mentioned, and we were talking a little bit off camera, how busy the sports schedule is. So, yes, we are in a global pandemic and safety comes first, but sports leagues have not stopped. And we've got NHL and NBA, which are obviously really in sync and going. And then when you look forward, we've got golf and UFC and we've got March Madness really on the precipice of beginning. Then we'll get into the Masters. And really this summer, there's just a whole slew of events that we're preparing that are going to take place. So good for our business to be busy.
And especially during a time like this, it really helps to learn how to adapt, because coming out of this, when things will start to dwindle or return to normal, as people may say, if you're able to handle the craziness of COVID, then everything else is going to be easier. I guess like a sports coach would say, you practice hard, then in game's easy, then you're unstoppable, right? So I'm sure that when you guys come out of this, that things will be even better for easing transitions, whether it be if there's anything that comes up or people aren't there in the studio, or being able to just work with whatever scenarios come up. Because when you have to have most of your workforce working remotely, you're doing in television, like that can be definitely very difficult, especially on the technology side.
No question. And I think you said it exactly right. I think out of every sort of bit of adversity you face, I mean, people always try to take a positive or some type of light out of that. And I think that's one of the things that this pandemic has certainly brought, shown us at TSN. I really thought had a great group team dynamic here to begin with, no question about it. And this pandemic going through this not only solidified that for me, but it's exceeded my expectations. Again, everybody has been so just aware of, not just the technology side of it, but, one of the things we had talked about was telling people, listen, we really want to have everyone to be safe and comfortable, and your health comes first. And I really think in this, people have been, we had to rely on each other, and people have been very open with how they're feeling on a day-to-day basis. And as you would know, listen, not every day is going to be great. We're going into a global pandemic. We've all sort of, faced adversity, everybody through this. So, but it's really just taught us how to come together as a team and lean on each other, not just from the technology standpoint, but again, just getting through on a day-to-day basis. And no question, I think when we come out of this, we're going to be stronger for this, not just again, from a technology standpoint, no doubt, there's some new systems we had to put in place here to abide by health and safety protocols, which I think will stick going forward. But above and beyond that, when you just talk about everybody's attitude and work ethic and what they've brought to the table, no doubt that going through this has shown that, yeah, we can really handle anything. And it's it's just been a blessing to be busy and to have all these events going on. Just as a not only as somebody who is employed by TSN, but as a general sports fan.
So yeah, as a sports fan, this is just really something that is so important because we realized last year in March not being able to watch the sports that we love so much and have just come to know as a casual part of our life. It was just so shocking, and it really made me, and I'm sure I speak for a lot of people, realize we can't take something like this for granted, and that it's such an important part of the fabric of our society and our culture in Canada, that without this programming that you guys put out TSN or whether it's at Sportsnet or CBC, that's a big portion of what people watch on television. And so the fact that you guys have been able to rally together to help bring us the sports that all us consumers and fans want to watch is just still a tremendous thing that I don't think people will ever take for granted ever again.
Yeah, Matthias, you mentioned taking things for granted. And obviously, I think there's a lot in life that a lot of us probably through this pandemic would learn never to take for granted again, or just things that we've learned through that. But sticking to the sports side of it, if I'm strictly talking about that, no question about it. I mean, I certainly never would have thought in my nearly 19 years of 18 years plus of being here at TSN that I would ever experience a pandemic. I know none of us ever thought that. So when you have it taken away, or you really have to pivot and rethink how you do things, no question. But I couldn't agree with you more, because I really feel like if you're strictly just talking about the sports fan in all of us, again, having that taken away and not having anything really for a number of months, was really hard to deal with. And I do feel like having sports, as you said, as a fan, and it does bring a small joy and comfort to people during this pandemic when we can't be going out like we used to. It really does teach you how important sports is. I always knew how important it was to my life, and I'm sure yourself as well. But no question, this pandemic tested that, and it certainly was one of those things where, yes, you realize when it gets taken away, man, I never thought it would get taken away, but no question, it's certainly something to never take for granted again. Because again, but on the flip side of that, it has brought, I think, that small port of joy and comfort that people need during this time.
Absolutely. And you mentioned in all the years of working at TSN, nearly 2 decades, nobody would have seen something like this coming. But that's a part of the learning curve, and that's a part of the career development that people have now acquired, whether they would have liked it or not. And I'm sure that coming out on the other side of this, people will realize, wow, in a way, and this doesn't sound good to say objectively, but it's good that COVID happened. And now people are, getting their pitchforks and their torches ready. But there's so much that I feel that people in the world, in sports and even outside, have woken up or realized and come to this epiphany of, when life stands still, where are you? What are you doing? Where do you want to go? When the world is on pause, how do you handle that? Like, nothing's happening that, the busyness, the craziness, the schedules and flying around to all these different jobs and seeing people. Now you get time to be by yourself and just reflect. What is it that I really want to do? Or where am I going with my life? And I think that will leave people better off than we were running around like chickens with our heads cut off.
Yeah, no question. I think that, one of the things that has come out of this, when you talk about taking positives out of a tough situation, Matthias, is definitely one of those. I think it's just taught everybody, whether we wanted to or not, to sort of pause, take a step back, reflect, take stock of what we have in our life, and, take stock of what's important. And I know that, that may sound cliche in a way, but it really is true. Personally speaking, there's a lot of things that, have happened to me, outside of my career that, again, you look at it, and again, I'll always be a sports fan. It makes me appreciate so much more that I have with my career and my colleagues and people here at TSN, if I'm keeping that to the sports aspect of things, but even outside of that and in regular life. And I can just know that that's had an effect on me in that way, just of how I sort of handle my day to day. So like you said, hopefully it's something where it's obviously very tough right now, what everybody's going through, but hopefully, when COVID's in the rearview mirror, we can all maybe reflect on it a year or two down the line and say, hey, you know what, as tough as that pandemic was, it did, bring some positive out of it that I can take forward in my life now.
For sure. I want to change the pace up a little bit and take it back to maybe closer towards the beginning of your career. You've been working at TSN for 18 plus years and have had the opportunity to see its evolution over time with many of the other guests who have talked about the beginnings of their careers at TSN at different points in time. Derek Taylor talked about his first time when it was sports desk, or seeing Darren Detition when TSN used to have the 1980s television style logo, and all the different things that have changed over the years. To go back to the beginning, did you want to work in sport right from the get-go when you finished high school? And how did you navigate your way into the industry, whether you did know or did not know that that was what you wanted to do?
Yeah. So, as far as my, my broadcasting career and what I wanted to do, I obviously grew up with sports and had a, big love of sports and played it, watched it, myself, my brother, my family was obviously big into it, not just driving us to practice, but in the coaching aspect of it as well. So I've already had that, that was instilled in me very early, and I was a huge fan of it. And, I think for myself, I was not only a fan of playing sports, but I just something in me just was really, drawn into the broadcast of a game. And I remember even watching TSN back in the day with, Jim Van Horn and John Wells, Michael Landsberg, they were fantastic. And hearing Bob Cole call a game or Don Whitman call a game, Dave Hodge was on the CBC broadcast. It was really, I was really drawn to what goes into a broadcast. So I knew I wanted to get into broadcasting when I was 12 or 13 years old, to be truthful with you. I remember playing street hockey, which is what we did so much back in the day, as the kids like to say. And, I would call the games. I would just sort of habitually start calling games. And it got to the point, if I didn't, my friends playing with me would sort of wonder what was going on. So, I really sort of was drawn to it then. After high school, through high school, I tried to get my voice out there, doing announcements and things like that. I ended up going to the University of Ottawa. I did a communications program there, volunteered, on the school radio station right away. So I got some exposure to the men's hockey team, men's and women's basketball, men's and women's volleyball. Good way to interview players, coaches, just get a taste and cut my teeth in the business. But beyond that, I was sort of felt like after I finished that, I kind of needed more. I felt, something else that gave me some more hands-on experience. So I applied to a few schools, ended up going to Humber College, did a fantastic broadcasting program there. Got a chance to really cut my teeth in the on-air writing, editing, everything that kind of goes into, a broadcast, which was great. And then I think, once I finished college, I did do an internship, kind of found myself floundering a little bit, I guess. It was kind of, didn't have anything full time, in the business. I still always wanted to do it. And it's funny, I ended up, I worked with my dad for a little bit, and then funny story of how it sort of connects, but I have a really good, one of my best friends. I've been friends with him for 20 plus years. His father, now retired, was a horse vet at Woodbine and Mohawk Racetrack. And I remember him telling me that one day, seeing the family, he said to me, hey, there's actually some postings up at Woodbine Entertainment to work in their TV department. So I remember throwing a resume in, kind of forgot about it, didn't follow up really, threw the resume in there. And then 6 months later, literally, I'm about to get on a flight to head to the East Coast, where a lot of my family is from. And it's somebody from the Woodbine Entertainment saying, like, you applied, and, once you're back, can you come in for, can we have an interview? And really it took off from there. So I ended up working in their TV department. There was a specialty channel called the Racing Network. So that was an opportunity for me to, again, cut my teeth. I did producing, directing, audio, camera. I did everything, which was fantastic. And it was a really great group of people I worked with. And then from there, how I sort of hopped into TSN, I had, another good friend of mine who I went to Humber with did an internship at TSN for one summer. And I remember reaching out to him because TSN for me was always the goal. And I remember reaching out to him and saying, all I need is a name. Like, I just give me the name of your manager. I'm not asking you to try to get me a job. Give me his name and I will do the rest. So he gave me his name, and the rest is sort of history, as they say. I reached out, I emailed it, reached out through email, and there was a lot of emails and a lot of phone calls. And, I was lucky enough, that, in late 2001, I ended up sort of coming on in a freelance role and been kind of with the company full time since 2002. About a year later, it turned into a full-time role, and here I am now. So I ended up working my way up. And really, I did. I came cut from the newsroom cloth, started out writing highlight packs, things that entry levels people do now in their position, and just worked my way up the rung. I did, I was an associate producer. I was a producer for a while. I did another position here, which is called highlight managing, which is sort of overseeing, our content on a night to night basis. So came in and yeah, and just sort of taking it step by step to get where I am now. So I've been lucky, blessed. I've worked really hard. I've met a lot of great people along the way, and I still have obviously plenty of great colleagues now. So it's been had a chance to experience a lot of great events, and it really is special to be able to, something you wanted to do as a kid, to be able to have that come to fruition is really just it's outstanding.
And with many of the things that you mentioned, the networking, the vision, the ability to work and go through the process, it seems sometimes so far away. And there's a handful of books I've read that talk about the pathway to success and how you're looking at this ginormous mountain that just is overwhelming. And you look and you're like, how am I going to get all the way up there? And then what ends up happening is you just start taking steps one by one. And then eventually you get all the way to the top and you look down, you're like, how did I get away all the way up here? And that's kind of what it sounds like you went through with going to Humber, after going to University of Ottawa, and then meeting your friend and just, I need the name, and then working your way up. So you talked about you really liked using your voice, and then you got into the behind the scenes work. Was that something that you were also open to equally, or were you leaning more towards trying to go to the on-air radio side? Or how did things end up panning out in terms of your path to wanting to be in broadcasting and then working behind the scenes?
It's interesting, obviously I think, and there's a lot of people I meet today, and there's still a lot of people, obviously, being on air was something that I think a lot of people dream of and they want. And I'm not going to, that was certainly one of the things that was on my list of accomplishments to do. But, for myself, I did get a taste of that from around 2008 to 2013, 2012, 2013. I was actually part of the broadcast team for the Brampton Battalion. Some of the best times of my life and career, and the experience I got from it was outstanding, being able to do that. And I had a great broadcast partner as well. But I think for me, that you had asked, like, yes, I think going into it, I had a little tunnel vision at the beginning with, I want to be on air. How can I take the steps to do that? But as far as the on air, and this sort of goes to, sort of plays off to I get asked, advice, and, there's so many things I could say about this business. But the one thing that I always tell people that really I bring up all the time is never say no to an opportunity. And I am proof of that. So when I ended up getting the position at Woodbine Entertainment, and, it was behind the scenes stuff, I'll be honest. I don't want to say, look, I was happy to join, but I think in my head right away, I was like, okay, I'm just going to use this as a stepping stone, and I'm going to try to get in there and get out maybe as soon as I can. But that, going in there was probably, again, one of the best decisions I ever made. So, when I talk about Woodbine, so I really enjoyed it. I met a lot of great people, and the experience was outstanding. So I think for myself, when I ended up making the jump to TSN, it was just sort of the way things played out and the opportunity was there. It wasn't me pushing like, oh, I got to get out of Woodbine. I got to get out of here. It wasn't that at all. It was just sort of the way things aligned for themselves. But really, for myself, I've had a chance to do some on air, which I loved. It was so much fun. But I've really, really enjoyed what I've done now in my career and working behind the scenes with so many great people. And that's, again, I know I get asked that a lot, either when I whether I teach, whether it's through just somebody reaches out, whether I've spoken at a school or to a group. But that's the one thing I always tell people about not saying no to an opportunity, because yes, there might be something in your head you want to do. And I totally respect that and I understand it. But my biggest thing is, you never know what is going to come from taking an opportunity. You don't know who you're going to meet, who you're going to impress with your work. And then all of a sudden that domino effect turns into a job or an opportunity. You never know, is all I can tell you. And again, it's the way it worked out. And um, again, I don't have any regrets whatsoever. I'm thankful for the opportunity I had to do the on air stuff with the Brampton Battalion. It was so much fun. But I'm extremely grateful and happy for what I'm doing now.
And I'm sure you also aren't really that upset in the sense that you've got to work with so many amazing people, the on-air talent, the people also behind the scenes, get a bit of both. So it's not like you weren't able to do something at TSN that wasn't tremendous, because any opportunity there, you didn't know where it was going to go, and where you've been now and the length of the time you've had in your career at TSN, like, is unmatched to many people who are still working there, right? So the people you met and the experiences you've had, I'm sure, aren't diminished in any way because it wasn't necessarily in the exact way that you were thinking from the beginning.
No, not at all. Like I said, I feel like, I'm grateful. I really am. It's been, I've really, really enjoyed my time here. I'm obviously really passionate about my job. I care a lot about the people. Um, so there's no question about that. Thankful for the experiences I've had. I mean, even one just, I mean, to be able to be at the 2010 Olympic Games in Vancouver was just, it was surreal. That's just one example, but to be able to be there, not only be there, but to share it with so many of my work colleagues was just, it was just a tremendous highlight. And no question. I don't feel in any way, nothing is diminished whatsoever. If anything, it's exceeded my expectations.
So with your work as a senior highlight manager, take us through some of the specific details that you would be in charge of or oversee in terms of whether it's on-air talent or content creation. What are some of the main facets that you handle in your day-to-day job, and how have you learned to master them?
Sure. I mean, a lot, obviously a big key is, it's organizational skills are very, very big in the position that I'm in. So essentially, as a senior highlight manager, there's a few things that are sort of under my umbrella. I manage the staff in the Sports Center newsroom. So that's a big group. Not only the full-time staff, but the freelance staff as well. So when you talk about managing them, doing a lot of the, long-term planning, scheduling with our events that are coming up, who are we going to assign to that? What groups do we want for that? Because not only do we have day-to-day Sports Center stuff, but we've got a number of bigger events on the docket. We do control shows for March Madness and for golf and for tennis and for, so many things that we have on that plate. So there's a lot there that I have to deal with from a planning aspect, especially with our staff. So, with our staff and our content, who's going to do what, so that's something that is certainly on the plate every day, and it's always evolving all the time. And, overseeing the internship program. So I'm able to, again, I get lots of reach out from students and people that want to reach out to me in that sense. So I deal a lot with that. As I said before, the internships are on hold from the newsroom side of it right now. But hopefully sooner than later, we can get people sort of back in and get them that true experience, which is really what's so great about it. And our internship, which runs, roughly 16 weeks, because I feel like that is just, when you come in here, you get a real opportunity to audition for a job. So you take the first month or so, I tell people to kind of like get settled into your surroundings and who you report to and everything else. And you really take that last 10 to 12 weeks to really push and show what you can do. So, that's another big part of what I do. I'm obviously their entry level hiring manager as well. I know a lot of interest comes through people who want to be on air and can I see a demo tape and everything like that. But I'm an entry level highlight manager in the sense that, somebody like myself is going to give somebody a start in this business. So, I almost call it I'm the reality check. Do you know what I mean? Like when it comes to, you come in, you do the work, you build yourself up, you get the experience, you get your feet wet in all different areas. You do your writing, you do your, whether it's writing or editing, or you learn how to do a feature. And I think that just helps shape the individual into what they want to do ultimately if they do want to get to the on-air spot. So I deal with that, in the entry level hiring aspect of it. And then I also work with our anchors. I work with our anchors on their, not only their planning and scheduling for Sports Center, but also their long-term planning and the projects they're going to be working on. So obviously have a lot on the plate, a lot to keep me busy, but I wouldn't change it for anything.
And with the people that you work with, whether it be anchors or entry level, that's such a vast range of talent and perspective and unique characteristics of different individuals in the industry. But I'm sure that complements well with how you handle dealing with diverse groups of people and making sure that everyone is taken care of, comfortable, knows their goals, their outcomes, their roles, and then can succeed and thrive in order to put together what always looks like a masterpiece for what the people are watching back at home.
Yeah, no question. I mean, there's obviously, look, it goes without saying, but there's a lot of communication, a lot of people skill involved in the job. I think what's really helped me a lot in this role is that I came up through the newsroom. I've been through those trials and tribulations. I understand that technology's changed and there's a lot more we can do, when it comes to bells and whistles with highlight packs, features, things of that nature. But a lot of the things that were instilled in me when I came up along the way are still there now when it comes to just the work ethic and the attitude and everything that goes into that part of it, and the people skill aspect of it. I've had my people skills, tested and developed as I've kind of come up the chain and dealing with a lot of different people, as you said. So I think that's really helped me. It's helped strengthen my communication skills. And it's just helped me when I'm trying to relate to people day to day, not just the guys and gals who work behind the scenes in the newsroom, but for the talent and the confidence I've developed in that myself. So no question, sort of a stop along, sort of building my way up through the newsroom has no question just benefited me in what I'm doing now. And as you said, having to deal with so many, different groups and types of people and personalities.
So for the listener out there, what would you say are a few of the key things that you look for in people who eventually get an on-air presence or are able to find their way onto Sports Center, whether it be in a feature role or whether it be as an anchor? Like, what would a person want? Like, for the listener out there, what should they know about the behind the scenes in terms of how that translates to the great men and women that we see sitting behind the desk, or those that are standing at the desk, so to speak?
Right. I think when you're talking about someone who's going to transition from behind the scenes to on air, I think really it gives them an appreciation for not just what everyone else does behind the scenes, but it helps shape them and what they're going to do. Again, they've been through, if they start behind the scenes, then they've been through, well, I've done highlight packs, I've done writing, I've done features. These are things that are just going to shape people that, when you go forward, and if you do make it to the on-air desk, you've been through all of that. So you have not only an appreciation for it and what goes into it, it's only going to help you with your experience when you get on the desk, because you're like, hey, I've been through this already. I've been through the writing aspect of it. I can not only help myself, but I can help others who are in the newsroom, develop their skills because I have some experience with it. So that's what it's really going to help you on that side of it. When it comes to the actual newsroom itself, if you're sort of saying like, okay, what can they expect? Or, a lot of the question I might get is, what do I look for maybe going into it? Look, I think a lot of times when I'm looking for things, sure, if you were to come in here, I could tell you, okay, experience, of course it helps. Sports knowledge, of course that helps. You know, that's just going to make your comfort level a little bit better. But really, when it comes down to it, sure, I'm going to judge you or myself and other members of the team because I really believe in the team aspect of it and leaning on others for input, intel, and help and everything like that. But I really feel like, when you come into the newsroom, as I said, experience, sure, that's something good to have. Sports knowledge is good, but I really, for me, I look at what I call almost intangibles. Like I look at, you know, what is your attitude like? What is your work ethic like? What is your investment? I've had people come in here that, maybe their sports knowledge wasn't maybe to what our expectation was or what their expectation was. But you know what? Their attitude and their willingness to dive in and to want to learn and to be mentored, that might sound cliche. I say it a lot to people and they always say that it makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's common knowledge. It might sound like that, Matthias, but there's so many people that there's only a select number of people that do it and that don't do it. So for myself, if I'm looking for somebody as an intern, I mean, sure, I'm going to look at their credentials and the experience they've gained. And then when it comes to the actual internship itself, like, listen, obviously, we feel like the 16 week is a good time to make an evaluation. And I really think, again, yes, people are going to be judged on their bottom line. So when it comes to, again, what the black and white, so what is their work like? You know, what is their work like? Yes, we're going to look at that, but beyond all of that, I get together with my team and I try to look at, okay, what was this person's attitude like? What was their work ethic like? What is their maturity like? What is their investment level? Maybe work wise, again, you've only had a few months, you're still very green, very new at the process, but it's like, hey, this person was really invested. Their attitude was really great. They wanted to learn. They took the steps to self-motivate themselves. They weren't sitting back and waiting for us to ask them to do certain things. They were really just self-motivated enough to put me with somebody who can help me learn, teach me how to do this stuff. That's how we really look at when it comes to the hiring process of bringing somebody on freelance. Is ultimately, for me, I would love it if an internship goes perfectly, and not perfectly, but an intern comes in, they make an impression, you know, and we look at them and say, hey, we want to continue to work with them and develop them going forward. And there's really an opportunity for that. So, I look at not only the intangibles, as I called it, Matthias, but we look at, hey, how do they work with the group? And what I mean overall by it is, what kind of a person are they? Like, so many times I'll tell people, well, you're a good person, or you're a nice guy, you're a nice gal, you know, that really goes a lot. How you treat people, how you respect people, that a lot goes into that. So that means something. So that's sort of what we're looking with, as far as what I bring in at an intern. So sure, I'll circle back and I'll do intel, and people will tell me about their experience and what they have and awards they've won, and hey, fantastic, and nothing against that. But a lot of what I look for is, if I'm reaching out to coordinators, maybe somebody who's recommended them to me, former interns, students that may know them who are already here. I want to find out what they are as a person. Tell me about them. Did you find them? Are they dependable? Work ethic and all those things that I talked about are really what kind of gets your foot in the door. And then it's kind of up to you to take it from there. We feel like we supply you with all the learning tools and what you need. At some point, it's on the individual to take all that, and you got to be able to kind of self-motivate yourself to take it to the next level.
Absolutely. And especially when it comes to intangibles, you think about sports comparisons and analogies. I remember doing a documentary, or not a long one, but a brief one in high school about, it was about Tom Brady, or he was tied into this component on, just getting to professional football. How do people do it? And then, Peter King from CBS Sports is talking about, you can never, ever measure how bad a guy wants it. When Tom Brady meeting Robert Kraft for the first time, and he thought he was Kyle Brady, the Jaguars tight end, and said to him, I want to let you know, this is one of the best decisions you ever made picking me. And you never know why he exudes that confidence. And then you see what he's done, and the results speak for themselves, right? But again, it's just all about, you mentioned the intangibles and the ways in which people show their character, right? Like you can have the most decorated resume and all these things, but if you're not a good person, or if there's maybe some issues there at the time, like that can create problems that maybe you can't anticipate how they will unfold. So you'd rather take the chance on someone that, you feel good about the uncertainty rather than not.
Yeah, no question. I feel like, listen, you're right. Like there's no substitute for hard work, right? Like it's, when people find a way that they want to get better, and I have so many people that reach out to, whether it's myself or one of the other managers here, and they, again, they want to pick their brain and they want to find out, how can I get better? What can I do to hone my craft in? And, right, there is no substitute for that, no question. So a lot of them that we've had is, for the most part, the interns I've had come through here, great attitudes, great work ethics. And it's, I really try to let people know that, listen, it's, let's call it a 4-month internship, to put the blinders on for 4 months and to really just dig in. 4 months going to go like that, no doubt about it. So just to really dig in and make that your focus for 4 months, to me, that is just such a sliver of time to what could be, and what could be for you going forward.
100%. And that's why internships are so key in the industry, is because of that tunnel vision, those horse blinders you said that you really need to put on and just go and get in the zone, so to speak, because 4 months flies like that. We're a year into COVID and it seems like we haven't left March 2020. So
no question.
Right. Just goes to show how fast things go. And you can't really, take for granted the time that you are living in, because if you don't stop and look around once in a while, you may miss it. Right.
Yeah, no question about it. No question. Time flies. It's one of the most, you know, it's one of the most, again, it's a very common phrase used, but it's so true. Like, I equate it to everything, as, even myself as a father, of an 8-year-old daughter. Like, one of the things, I get asked, or when I had friends come up and who are going to be fathers after I'd become one, just advice, and not to take it, too far off track. But one of the things I said, I'm like, look, I'm not going to tell you anything, because really it's like, look, everyone has to be comfortable with what they want to do. But one of the things I always say is just cherish the time, because it really does fly. And that's, you could equate that to any walk of life. And the last year with the pandemic is a perfect example. It's a pandemic, and most people might think that time's going to stand still. But look, really, I found March 2020 to be slow. April picked up a little bit, but from May of 2020 till now has really been a blur, despite the fact we've been living in a pandemic and haven't been able to do much.
Yeah, it's so crazy to think about. And even people talk about, as a big CFL fan, people are like, oh, well, we didn't play last year, and oh my goodness, and what's going to happen? And I was kind of thinking like, yeah, I didn't really, like, during Labor Day and when Labor Day weekend was supposed to be happening, I wasn't like, man, I wish I could be in Regina watching the Bombers win or any of that stuff. I was just kind of like, what am I doing today? What do I need to focus on getting done? And I was just so in the zone that when I stopped to think about, oh, the last time there was a CFL game played, I was there, but it was like a year and a half ago. Or by the time the next game happens, it'll seem like, oh, it feels like it hasn't been that long. But when you get lost in that state of flow, then you realize, especially with behind the scenes, what you guys have been doing, and Sports Center has just been so much more hectic than you've ever experienced. And, you've been having fun your whole career, I'm sure. And like we say, 18 years has probably flown by when you're having tons of fun, and especially when you're in the zone.
No doubt. I mean, time just keeps, no doubt, it keeps going by quicker. And, as it's, whether it's my career or what we were just talking about with internship 4 months, and that's just going to go by in a blur. And the next thing you know, you're going to be, man, it's coming to an end. And, then you start thinking to yourself, well, have I done enough to kind of prove myself to go to the next level? So that's why I say, 4 months might seem like a long time when you walk in the door, where you feel like, as an intern, I got time to, like, just, you dig in for 4 months, and it really could set you up for really, years ahead. You never know.
Well, Scott, we're getting towards the end of our time here in today's episode. So I wanted to ask you a few questions to wrap up and have a little bit of fun before we depart for today. All right. So in your years working on Sports Center, what's the funniest thing that's ever happened behind the scenes that, like, people wouldn't see or know about?
Ooh, well, there've been a couple of classics. I'll just say a couple of times it's been, when we were back in the, in our newsroom setting, when our hockey insiders used to do, whatever insider we were going to do would do something that would happen. They would do it in the newsroom, on the newsroom floor with the workers in the background. So one thing that always gave us a good chuckle is, when an insider would be taping and there'd be somebody sitting behind the camera and they'd be, taking a massive bite of a hamburger or sandwich that would get on camera, and you would just see them behind there. And it always gave me a laugh because there were so many things we brought back where Bob McKenzie'd be doing an insider on the Toronto Maple Leafs and somebody would be, taking a massive bite of a hamburger in the background. Those were always things that never got on TV, and they were just, I don't know. There was something that consistently always gave me a chuckle. Obviously there's a lot of other, so many other things that, that we got into, the couple of times that, scripts were handed to the talent when they were on air, and you would just see like a big arm in the way or somebody duck down and try to run off set. But, those are things that, certainly kept the camaraderie in the newsroom and always gave us a good laugh and kept things light.
As a sports fan, what's been the most fun or the most enjoyable moment, I guess you'd say, that you've watched from your work environment? And what's been the toughest one that you've had to watch from within your work environment, whether for, I guess, whatever team you cheer for, if it's the Leafs or somebody.
I think that for myself, probably the toughest, I'm going to start with the toughest because I remember this very well. So the toughest, no question, would have been, so I think you remember Perdita Felicien, Canadian Olympic hurler, in the hurdles, track star in the hurdles. And I remember doing the highlight pack for her when she was at the Olympics, and she was the heavy favorite, and she ended up stumbling on the second hurdle, I believe it was, during the gold medal race. And I just remember the hush and the pin drop you could hear before the race started because everyone was on pins and needles. And then when that actually happened and she came, everything kind of came crashing down for her. That was certainly one of the toughest things. And obviously being in control of that highlight pack, that was something that I don't think myself or anybody was expecting because everybody thought that she was going to win. So that was pretty amazing. And then I think, look, there's been so many highlights that I've been privy to of being able to watch, being in the newsroom. I think one of them probably was when Tiger won the 2008 US Open on a broken leg. When he beat, when he not only to get in, it was more the playoff on Monday was fun. To get into the playoff on the Sunday when he made that putt on 18 was incredible. I mean, look, it's been so many moments that, World Junior Gold, and I'm a huge tennis fan, watching Roger Federer win. And, obviously, there's been so many on the list, but that really, as a huge golf fan, that sticks out to me as just, I mean, the whole newsroom was buzzing, and it was just incredible what Tiger was doing during that time when he was just dominating the sport.
So you mentioned golf now. I was going to say, if there was two athletes that you could sit down and have a 10-minute conversation about whatever you wanted, who would it be and why?
Wow. A 10-minute conversation, and who would it be and why?
Yeah. Two people. Because I know one would be too hard.
Okay. Well, I'm a huge Miami Dolphin fan. Yes. I grew up watching Dan Marino, and I was absolutely just mesmerized by what he could do and how far he could throw a football. So if I was going to have a conversation, I'd have a question. I'd have a 10-minute sit down with Deshaun Watson and ask him, what would it take to get you to come to the Miami Dolphins? That is certainly one for sure that I would, that's certainly for sure what I would love to do. And, I guess, what, just because he's such a mesmerizing, individual, and maybe now's not the time, but how could you not want to have a 10-minute conversation with Tiger Woods? I mean, just everything he's been through, and you think about, what he's going through now. It would just be to be a fly on the wall, just to know, are you going to come back? Like, you've done so much, you've got so many injuries, you're lucky to be alive, but that party that wants to know, because I have some family and friends who are convinced he's coming back, and I do think he will too. But just to know, ask him that question, like, you're coming back, right? Like, you're coming back to win again and really just make a storybook ending to a career that's been unbelievable.
And final question that I have, what was the most memorable sports moments that you witnessed as a kid?
Ooh. Oh, as a kid. Okay. Easy. I would say the 1992 World Series, the Toronto Blue Jays, the first ever team in Canada to make it to the World Series. I was lucky enough to attend both game 2 and game 2 and game 5. Obviously they won in 6 in Atlanta, but to be able to be there, especially game 2, the first 2 would have been in Atlanta. So it was game 3, games 3 and 5, pardon me. Um, to be able to witness that first game and the buzz and the media and the people, like it was something. Again, that's obviously one of my favorite teams of all times. Roberto Alomar, my favorite Blue Jay of all time. Unbelievable, just the atmosphere and the energy and the crowd. It was nothing. It was unbelievable. First ever World Series in Canada, first ever game in Canada. To be there, nothing will beat that.
I couldn't even imagine what that would have been like. I was hanging out with a buddy the other day. We were talking. He's a big Blue Jays fan. He literally has a signed Roberto Alomar baseball in his house, actually, is showing me. And he was saying, man, to get your hands on World Series merchandise from the Blue Jays 92, 93, so uncommon, so rare, so expensive, because people talk about how big it was for the Raptors to win. Well, that was obviously a colossal monument in basketball, no question.
No question. And they won back-to-back World Series, and just unbelievable for the country. And that team was so beloved, and so many unbelievable players that played both 92 and 93. It was a joy to watch that.
And I remember I put up a poll on Instagram and asked friends, and one of my buddies was really like, he went to the grave, like, for Joe Carter's World Series winning home run. Like, because people talk about Crosby golden goal, of course, in Canada, once in a lifetime, in the words of Chris Cuthbert, but walk-off World Series winning home run in Canada. The radio call, it will live in fame forever.
Yeah, you can't beat that. You just can't. You can't. I mean, it's not a walk-off home run to win the World Series. Doesn't get any better.
No, it really, really doesn't. But with that, Scott, I want to thank you for having been on today's episode. It was such a pleasure to talk sports, behind the scenes, and more about your career. It was a great pleasure. I'm so glad you were able to be on.
Thank you so much, Matthias. It was a blast. And again, it was my pleasure.
Well, thank you for listening to today's episode with Senior Highlight Manager from TSN, Scott Hart.